Welcome back to Explorium Academy Session 6. Today, in this video, we're going to be building an ABM or account-based motion expansion agent. In this video, we're going to extend on the inbound agent that we built in the last session. What this means is when a company scores well from the inbound agent, we are then going to build an agent to expand on that account, finding relevant leads at that same company. Now let's go straight into N8N. All right, so right now I have open the inbound agent workflow that we built in the last video. And like I mentioned today, we're going to be expanding on it to build the ABM expansion agent. And what this means is if a lead that we pass through the inbound agent scores highly, we want to then further enrich it with contacts. And then we're going to actually push those contacts into the relevant account in our Salesforce so our go-to-market team can more effectively action on this information. All right, so the first thing we need to do is we need to find out where in our inbound agent we are actually receiving these scores. And we're actually receiving them here in the AI agent step, if you remember. So if we click in here, you can see that it outputs a lead score. And I actually already ran through an example for the inbound agent to have it preloaded. I ran through Apple for the sake of this video. And all right, so now let's move on. So right after this AI agent, the thing we want to do is we want to add in a if node. All right, so if you search if here and we input that node, you can see it inputs and splits right after the AI agent. So we will still have our inbound agent path right here, but then this is going to split off where we can further enrich this company with contacts and push it to Salesforce. All right, so in this if node, the first thing we want to do is we want to drag in this lead score because this is what it's going to be comparing. So if this lead score is equal to high priority, and let's also convert types where required, then we should set it to true. Perfect. So you can see it outputted as true because the lead score is a high priority for Apple. Perfect. So now this next path is going to run through successfully. So the next thing we want to do is we need to add in a Salesforce node. And we want to do this because we actually need to get the relevant account ID from our Salesforce. So Salesforce actually has many native nodes in N8N. If you search Salesforce here, you can see that there's a lot of different options you can choose from. The first node that we want to input is actually a get many accounts node, so we can find the ID of the account for Apple in our Salesforce. So once you open that here, you want to make sure you have your relevant Salesforce credentials. You want to look for an account and operation get money. We actually only want to return one account since we are specifically just looking for Apple. Let's add a field and conditions, and we actually want to search for the account based on account name. All right, so now if we drag in the account name and let's drag it in from our first match node, you can see that our input is going to be Apple. Great, so if we drag that in right there and we execute the step, you can see that it returned the relevant account in our Salesforce for Apple, and now we have our Salesforce ID for that account, which we'll use later to push contacts into it. Let's clean that up. All right, so now that we have the Salesforce account for Apple, the statement is configured correctly. Now let's move on and actually enrich contacts for Apple. So we're going to do this using the fetch endpoint for Explorium. So if you go over here and search Explorium API, click on it, you can see there's a few options for you to choose from. We're going to use the fetch endpoint. And again, make sure you have credentials, make sure the operation is set to fetch, and we want to set type to prospects to search for people instead of companies. We want to enable extract data, set mode to full, and for the sake of example, let's return 5 contacts. You can set this to whatever you desire, but for the sake of this video, let's limit it to 5. All right, and now the next thing that we need to do is we need to turn on auto pagination. What this does is it will separate each contact we return into its own item, and an item is a very important structure in N8N. It allows future nodes to use this input and go through each of the items individually. If you didn't have this turned on, it would return all of the contacts as one item, and you have to use code nodes and a loop over node in order to go through each of the contacts individually. So what auto-pagination essentially does is it creates a very usable structure for n8n to move forward. All right, so now the next thing we want to do is input the business ID for Apple that we had received in our first match node. So we're going to go 5 nodes back, and we're going to drag in the business ID for Apple. All right, so now that we have that parameter set, we can now set the other filters that we want to filter contacts by. So there's many options you can choose from. You can filter by job level, job department, job titles. Let's filter for job levels. Let's look for directors and senior level employees at Apple. And let's do specifically in the sales department or the strategy department. Perfect. Now that we have that configured, let's execute this step. Awesome. You can see that there's now 5 items for the 5 prospects we brought back at Apple. You can see we have their names here. All right. Now that we have our 5 prospects, the next thing we want to do is we want to enrich contact details. The fetch endpoint at Explorium, it brings back only relevant contact information for these relevant information for these prospects that you can use to filter for them or just generally identify them. If we actually want to get contact information, we need to use a further enrich endpoint. So what we're going to go next is look for the Explorium API again, and instead of fetch, we're going to go click on the enrich endpoint. Again, make sure you have your credentials and your operation is set to enrich. And let's change it to prospect to enrich person data. And now we already have the contact information enrichment already set. So let's go here and drag in the prospect ID. And we just need to do that for the first item or the item that is shown here in the input. Like I mentioned, n8n will automatically go through each of the 5 items and enrich them with contact information. So now if we execute this step, we can see that we have 5 items returned with their relevant contact information. Perfect. So now that we have all of the information that we wanted to bring back on this high quality lead, let's go ahead and push this contact information into our Salesforce. So the next thing we want to do is we want to add another Salesforce node. So search over here, Salesforce, and now we actually want to go down to a contact action. So if you scroll down to contact actions, we're going to create a contact. So there's a few things that we need to do here first. First, we need to uh, all right, so there's a few things we need to do here first. Um, First, we need to make sure that we are adding these contacts to the relevant account name or account ID. So let's first go over to our last Salesforce node from get many accounts, and let's drag in our account ID. First, we want to set this to expression so we can drag in a previous node or previous input. So if we drag that here, we now have the account ID for Apple in our Salesforce. Now, what we're going to do is we need to put in the relevant information for each of these contacts. So let's go back from the output from our fetch endpoint. So that's going to be 2 nodes back. And we need to, one of the necessary fields we need to add in is the last name of the contact. So let's drag that here. Great. Now let's add a few more fields that would be helpful for identifying these contacts. Let's add title. Let's add first name. And let's add email. All right, so let's drag in the first name. And then if we scroll down here, we can drag in the job title, which is client partner search abs for this individual. Again, it will automatically go through each of the 5 items for each of the 5 individuals and create contacts for them in Salesforce. Oh, I dragged that into the wrong box. Job title goes down here. And then our professional email, we're going to get from our contact enrichment endpoint, which is going to be 1 node back. So if you go here, here's the output for that specific individual. And if we go down here to professional email, we can drag that in right here. All right. Now that is all done, we can actually execute this step and it should push all 5 contacts to our Apple account in Salesforce. All right, and we can see that it worked successfully. So now if we go over here into Apple and or if we go over here into Salesforce and we go over here into the contacts, we can see the 5 contacts that we just enriched and pushed to Salesforce. Great. So now we have our entire ABM expansion agent workflow, which is just building on top of our inbound agent, completed. I recommend everyone go and give this a try yourself and customize where you feel is necessary and really just explore this yourself. Good luck, and I look forward to seeing everyone in session 7.